After my sister kicked my 12-year-old daughter out, my mother told us we weren't needed. I stopped paying their bills, and now they're facing eviction. I never thought I would stand before this front door again. The sight of it after all these years felt less like a homecoming and more like a confrontation with a ghost. My name is Bella, and this house is a graveyard of memories I'd tried desperately to bury. My phone, still warm in my pocket from my mother's urgent and unexpected call, felt like a lead weight. Behind me, my car sat silently in the driveway, and my thoughts drifted to my 9-year-old daughter, Emma, whom I just dropped off at my friend Sarah's. Just for a couple of hours, I told her, a confidence in my voice that my heart didn't share. My last meaningful conversation with my parents had been at my grandmother's funeral 3 years ago. Before that, it was a day that changed the course of my life forever. I was 18, standing on this very porch, my face wet with tears, as they made their choice. They were giving my college fund to my sister, Lisa, to pay for her lavish wedding. "But it's my education," I had cried. "Your sister needs a proper wedding," my mother had said, her voice firm. "You can take out student loans like everyone else." I left that day and never truly looked back. It was my grandmother, God bless her soul, who became my lifeline. She helped me pay for community college, not the prestigious university I had dreamed of, but it was a start. Fueled by a fierce determination, I worked tirelessly, earned my degree, and built my own life from the ground up. The years that followed were a blur of small victories and quiet strength. I met Jack, my ex-husband, in my final year of college. We married, had Emma, and for a while, our world was perfect. Even after our divorce 2 years ago, we managed to remain civilized, united by our shared commitment to putting Emma first. Now, at 36, I was thriving. The apartment I bought with my inheritance from my grandmother generated a steady rental income. Combined with Jack's generous alimony and my part-time job at Marshall and Associates, I had the freedom to spend a great deal of quality time with Emma. Taking a deep breath, I finally rang the doorbell. "Whatever they want," I told myself. "I am no longer that scared, desperate girl." The door swung open, and my mother's face appeared, her enthusiasm for my arrival catching me completely off guard. She looked older, her hair grayer, her eyes framed by deeper lines than I remembered. My father stood behind her, offering a weak smile that didn't quite reach his distant eyes. "Where's Emma?" Mom asked, peering past me. "We haven't seen her since she was a baby." I cut her off, stepping inside. "You said it was urgent." The house smelled the same, a mix of my mother's vanilla air freshener and my father's strong coffee. As they led me into the living room, I couldn't help but notice how worn everything was. The expensive furniture they had purchased for Lisa's wedding was now showing its age. "Would you like some tea?" Mom asked, her hands twisting nervously. "Just tell me why you called," I said, my voice steady. "It's been years, and suddenly it's urgent." My mother's face crumpled, and she began to sob, not the quiet tears of my childhood, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. My father put his arm around her. "We're going to lose the house," he finally said, his gaze fixed on the floor. I waited, knowing there was more to come. There always was. "Your sister," Mom started, and that familiar twist of dread coiled in my gut. Of course, it was about Lisa. She asked us to take out a business loan for her husband Tom's business. We used the house as collateral. "Let me guess," I said, my tone flat. "Lisa's not paying. Tom's business went bankrupt." My father nodded, still avoiding my gaze. "Lisa and the kids are struggling. They stopped making the payments, and we can't cover it ourselves." I started to laugh, a bitter, hollow sound that made them both stare at me as if I'd lost my mind. "So you called me," I said, the laughter dying in my throat. "The daughter you abandoned, the one whose education you gave away, to bail you out of another mess that Lisa created? We know you're doing well," my mother said quickly, wiping her eyes. "Your apartment, the rental income, we wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate." I stood there, looking at the people who had chosen my sister over me at every turn. They hadn't even sent me a wedding invitation. They had barely acknowledged my presence at my grandmother's funeral because Lisa was pregnant. "I'll think about it," I heard myself say, a phrase that surprised me as much as it did them. "I need to go pick up Emma." As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of a monumental decision, one that could either be a grave mistake or a necessary step toward healing. Either way, my life was about to change. "Mom, why are you crying?" Emma asked the moment I picked her up. My daughter had always been perceptive, sometimes too much so. I quickly wiped my eyes, not even realizing I had been crying during the drive. "Just thinking about some stuff, sweetie," I said, forcing a casual tone. "I actually saw your grandparents today." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? The ones from the pictures? Can I meet them?" Of course she would want to. They were her grandparents, even if they had never bothered to be a part of her life. I spent the next week wrestling with my thoughts, playing out every possible scenario in my head. "You're insane," Sarah told me over coffee. "After everything they did?" "Maybe I am," I admitted. "But Emma deserves a chance to know them. And maybe I need this, too, to finally face it all." A week later, I found myself driving back to the house, this time with a 12-year-old Emma bouncing excitedly in the passenger seat. The reunion was strange and awkward. My mother burst into tears again, and my father stood there stiffly until Emma broke the ice, running up and hugging them both. They looked shocked, then utterly delighted, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of genuine joy in their eyes, the same kind I used to see directed at Lisa. We spent the afternoon there, and I watched as Emma charmed them completely. She showed them her drawings, talked about school and her friends, and told them about the time she won the spelling bee. They listened to her every word, and when they looked at me, I saw something I hadn't expected, a deep, profound regret. That evening, as Emma chattered happily about her grandparents on the drive home, I made my decision. The next day, I called my rental agent and arranged to rent out my apartment again. Then I called my mother. "I'll help with the loan payments," I said before I could change my mind. "I'm moving in with Emma. The rental income from my apartment will go toward the loan, and I'll help with bills. But we need to set some boundaries." There was a long silence on the other end, then my mother's voice, choked with tears. "Thank you, Bella. Thank you so much." Within 2 weeks, Emma and I were living in the house. I bought new appliances, a fancy refrigerator with an ice maker that Emma loved, a dishwasher that actually worked, and a quiet washing machine that didn't sound like it was about to explode. My father's back problems improved now that he didn't have to hand-wash dishes, and my mother seemed genuinely happy to have us there. Life settled into a surprisingly comfortable routine. My mother started making breakfast, and despite my initial reservations, it was nice to come downstairs to fresh coffee and pancakes. She picked Emma up from school and helped her with homework, even starting to teach her to bake, a patience I'd never had. My father switched to part-time work, his constant backaches finally getting better with less physical strain. He taught Emma how to play chess, and their weekly matches became a cherished tradition. I found myself taking on more hours at work. My boss, Mrs. Thompson, called me into her office one day. "We've been noticing your increased dedication lately," she said. "How would you feel about a promotion?" The new position meant more money but also more responsibility, including regular business trips. In the past, I would have turned it down immediately. A single mom with no support system. It wouldn't have worked. "I'll take it," I said, surprising myself with my newfound confidence. The first time I had to leave for a business trip, I was a nervous wreck. 3 days in Chicago felt like an eternity. "She'll be fine," I repeated to myself 100 times. And she was. My mother sent me pictures of Emma doing her homework, having dinner, and playing with my father. It was working. All of it was working. But there were moments that made me uneasy, little things that hinted at old patterns. My mother would take calls from Lisa and disappear into her room, emerging with red eyes. I'd find bank transfer notifications on her new tablet I'd set up for her, money going to Lisa's account. "She needs help sometimes," Mom defended when I confronted her. She's going through a rough patch with Tom. Mom, I'm paying all your bills and the loan that Lisa defaulted on. I shot back. How is it fair that you're sending her money? You don't understand. Mom snapped, suddenly defensive. Lisa's not to blame for Tom's business failing. She has 2 children to feed. And I have 1 child and all your bills to feed. I countered, but my mother had already turned away, shutting down the conversation just as she always had when it came to Lisa. These arguments became more frequent, but I tried to ignore them. Emma was happy, I was advancing in my career, and most days it felt like we were finally healing old wounds. My father even apologized one night after a few glasses of wine for what happened with my college fund. We made mistakes, he said, staring into his glass. Big ones. I wanted to say more, to finally have the conversation we'd been avoiding for 18 years, but my mother quickly changed the subject to Emma's school play. 3 years passed. Emma turned 12, looking more grown up every day. I became accustomed to my new role at work, traveling every few weeks, but always coming home to a happy daughter. The loan payments were steady, the bills were paid, and life was stable. Then came that Tuesday evening. I remember it was Tuesday because I had just closed a big deal in Phoenix and caught an early flight home to surprise Emma. As I walked up the driveway, I could hear voices, too many voices. Opening the front door, I stepped into chaos. Sprawled on the couch I just had reupholstered was Lisa. Beside her were 2 kids I recognized from photos but had never met, my niece and nephew. Suitcases were scattered across the living room, and Lisa was tapping away on her phone, barely looking up as I entered. "Oh," she said, her tone making it clear I was interrupting something. "Look who's here." And just like that, I knew everything was about to change again. Only this time, I wasn't that naive 18-year-old, and I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. "I left Tom," Lisa announced lazily from the couch as if she were commenting on the weather. "He's a complete loser. We'll be staying here now." I stood there, my work bag still in hand, trying to process what I was hearing. My parents sat in their usual chairs, looking everywhere but at me. "You'll be staying here?" I repeated slowly. "In the house where I pay all the bills and the loan that you defaulted on?" Lisa's face flushed red. "Oh, here we go. Miss Perfect with her money and her job. Some of us have actual problems, Bella." "Actual problems?" I said, my voice rising. "Like taking out a huge loan in our parents' name and then not paying it? That kind of problem?" "Girls, please," my mother interrupted, finally finding her voice. "We're family. We need to stick together in times like these." I let out a harsh laugh. Funny how family becomes important only when you need something. Where was this family spirit when you gave away my college fund or when you didn't even invite me to Lisa's wedding? That was years ago, Bella. Why can't you let it go? Your sister needs us now. The next few weeks were tense and unbearable. Lisa sprawled on the couch all day, texting and watching TV while her kids ran wild through the house, creating messes they never cleaned up. But what truly got to me was the change in my parents. Suddenly, Emma was invisible to them. When she tried to show my mother her math test where she got an A, Mom just waved her away, too busy helping Lisa's son with his video game. When Emma asked Dad for their weekly chess match, he said he was too tired, then spent the next 2 hours playing catch with my niece in the backyard. "Mom," I confronted her one evening after Emma was in bed. "What's going on? Why are you treating Emma differently?" "Don't be ridiculous." My mother dismissed me. "Emma's older. She doesn't need as much attention. Anna and Michael are younger. They need more support right now." "Support? Emma is 12. She needs her grandparents too." But my mother had already turned away, hurrying to answer Lisa's call for more snacks. 2 months crawled by. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects just to avoid being home. Lisa still hadn't looked for a job, and my parents seemed perfectly content with it. Every time I brought it up, they defended her. "She's going through a difficult time," my father would say. "She has the children to think about," my mother would add. Meanwhile, I was still paying for everything, the loan, the bills, the groceries that now disappeared twice as fast. But the money wasn't what bothered me most. It was watching Emma become a ghost in her own home. Then came that Wednesday. I had come home early hoping to take Emma out for ice cream, our little escape when things got too tense. I heard shouting before I even opened the front door. "You lazy, good-for-nothing brat!" Lisa's voice echoed through the house. "Look at this mess. Clean it up right now!" I rushed inside to find Lisa standing over Emma, who was on her knees picking up scattered toys that I immediately recognized as belonging to my nephew. "What's going on here?" I demanded. "Your precious princess refuses to help around the house," Lisa spat. "She thinks she's too good to clean up after her cousins." "After her cousins?" I looked at the toys again. "You mean your kids' mess? Where are they, by the way?" "They're napping. Someone has to keep this house in order, and since you're never here..." "I'm never here because I'm working," I exploded. "Unlike some people who lie around all day expecting everyone else to support them." The argument that followed was ugly. Lisa ran to our parents, crying about how I was bullying her, and they took her side. Of course, they took her side. "Bella, you need to be more understanding," my mother pleaded. "Lisa has children. What about my child?" I interrupted. "What about Emma?" But they didn't answer. They never did when it came to choosing between Lisa and me. I thought that was bad, but I had no idea what was coming. The following week, I had to fly to Seattle for an emergency meeting. It was only supposed to be for 5 days. "You'll be okay?" I asked Emma for the 100th time at breakfast. "I'll be fine, Mom," she assured me, trying to smile. "I've got my phone. We can video chat every night." 4 days into my trip, around 9 p.m. Seattle time, my phone rang. Emma's picture flashed on the screen. "Mom." Her voice was small, broken by sobs. "Mom, I'm outside. Aunt Lisa kicked me out. She said I was in the way. I only have my phone." The world stopped spinning. My 12-year-old daughter was on the street, at night alone. With shaking hands I called Sarah. "Please," I begged. "Can you pick up Emma? She's outside my parents' house." Then I called Lisa. She answered on the 5th ring, sounding annoyed. "Oh, did the princess call you?" she sneered. "Maybe now she'll learn not to be so obstinate, always arguing, always thinking she's better than everyone else." I hung up and called my parents. My mother answered. "Your granddaughter is on the street," I said, my voice ice cold. "Did you know that? Did you watch while Lisa threw her out?" There was a long pause, and then my mother's voice hardened. Maybe it's better this way, Bella. Maybe you and Emma should find somewhere else to live. You don't really fit here anymore." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. Some things never change. Some people never change. "You're right, Mom," I said quietly. "We don't fit there. We never did." I hung up and booked the first flight home. It was time to end this cycle once and for all. The flight home was the longest 5 hours of my life. Sarah sent me updates about Emma every half hour, but I couldn't rest until I could hold my daughter in my arms. When I finally got to Sarah's house at 3 a.m., Emma was asleep on the couch, tear tracks still visible on her cheeks. She told me what happened. Sarah whispered as I stroked Emma's hair. "Bella, it's worse than you think." According to Emma, Lisa had been treating her like a servant for weeks, making her clean the house, cook for Lisa's kids, do their laundry. When Emma finally stood up to her, saying she needed to study for a test, Lisa lost it. "Get out!" Lisa had screamed. "Get out of my house!" "It's not your house," Emma had replied. "My mom pays for everything." That's when Lisa grabbed Emma's arm and physically pushed her toward the door. Your parents watched it happen. They watched and did nothing. I let Emma sleep and spent the night making calls. First to my rental agency, explaining the situation and asking them to help me end the current tenant's lease early. Then to my lawyer, asking about my rights regarding the appliances and furniture I'd bought. Finally, to a moving company. The next morning, I took Emma to breakfast at her favorite diner. "Baby, I need you to be honest with me," I said, watching her pick at her pancakes. "Has this happened before? Has Lisa hurt you before?" Emma's silence told me everything. She said I was spoiled. Emma finally whispered that I thought I was better than her kids. And Grandma said the same thing, that I needed to learn my place. My hand shook as I gripped my coffee cup. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you seemed happy," Emma said, looking up at me with those wise eyes that sometimes made me forget she was only 12. "You were smiling more. And Grandma and Grandpa, sometimes they were nice when Aunt Lisa wasn't around." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Listen to me, Emma. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is more important to me than you. Not my parents, not their house, not any of it. We're going home to our apartment, and this time, we're staying there." After breakfast, we drove to my parents' house. Lisa's car was gone, probably on one of her mysterious errands that never seemed to involve job hunting. My mother opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. "Bella? We didn't expect you back so soon." I walked past her without a word, Emma's hand firmly in mine. The moving crew I'd hired was already waiting outside. "Take everything I bought," I instructed them. "The refrigerator, the washing machine, the dishwasher, the new couch, the TV." I went through the house, pointing out every item I had purchased over the past 3 years. "You can't do this." My mother's voice rose in panic. "We need those things." "Actually, I can," I replied calmly, handing the movers my proof of purchase for each item. "I bought them. They're mine." My father came home while the movers were working. He stood in the doorway, watching as they dismantled the entertainment system I had bought last Christmas. "Bella," he started, but I cut him off. "Don't. Just don't. You watched Lisa throw your granddaughter out on the street. You chose Lisa over me again, and this time, you chose her over Emma, too. We're done." "But the loan?" Mom's voice quivered. "The bills?" I turned to face them both. "You'll have to figure that out yourselves. Just like I had to figure out college on my own. Just like Emma had to figure out how to survive being kicked out of her home at night. Consider this my final payment for all the times you chose Lisa over me." The next few months were a strange mix of chaos and peace. My parents and Lisa didn't go down without a fight. The calls started the very next day, a relentless barrage of angry accusations and tearful pleas. The text messages were worse, screenshots of their overdue bills, photos of Lisa's kids looking sad, transparent attempts to guilt-trip me. "Why don't you answer them?" Emma asked one evening as my phone buzzed with another message. We were sitting on our apartment's balcony, sharing a pizza and watching the sunset. Our apartment felt different now, smaller than my parents' house, but somehow more spacious without the weight of their expectations. "Because we don't owe them anything," I replied. "Sometimes the best response is no response at all." Emma nodded, a new understanding in her eyes. "I miss Grandpa's chess games sometimes," she admitted. "But not how they made me feel when Aunt Lisa came." I pulled her close. "We can get you chess lessons if you want. You can learn from someone who won't stop playing with you just because your cousin shows up." Weeks turned into months. Through the family grapevine, I heard updates about my parents' situation. They had gone back to working full-time, struggling to pay their bills. The bank was threatening foreclosure. Lisa was still not working, still complaining about me to anyone who would listen. I used the money I'd been spending on my parents' bills to take Emma on weekend trips instead. We visited theme parks, went hiking, and took cooking classes together. Without the constant drama of my parents' house, I could focus more on my work while actually spending quality time with my daughter. Emma's grades improved without Lisa's kids interrupting her study time, and she joined the school chess club, making new friends. One Sunday morning, almost a year after we'd left, I was making breakfast when Emma came into the kitchen looking thoughtful. "Mom," she said, "are you happy now?" I stopped whisking the eggs and really thought about it. Was I happy? Happy that I'd walked away from a toxic situation. Happy that I'd protected my daughter. Happy that I'd finally broken free from the pattern of always putting Lisa first. Yes, I said finally. I am. Are you Emma? She smiled, that bright, unworried smile I hadn't seen in years. Yeah. I like it being just us. Later that day, I deleted all my parents' numbers from my phone. I kept their voicemails, though, stored in a folder labeled, "Never Again," a reminder of why we left in case I ever started to doubt myself. I heard through relatives that the bank finally foreclosed on my parents' house. They moved into a small apartment, and Lisa found someone else to mooch off of, her new boyfriend, apparently. Sometimes I wonder if they ever really understood what they did wrong or if they're still telling themselves that I'm the selfish one. But honestly, I don't care anymore. Emma and I might be a small family, but we're a real one. We travel when we want, laugh when we want, and never have to apologize for taking up space in our own home. The money I used to spend on my parents' bills now goes into Emma's college fund, and this time, nobody's going to give it away for someone else's wedding.